Wait, I'm just rolling. This is
Whee!
so stupid.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the patch 8.3 PTR. I am here to bring you as much information as I can about the new horrific assaults, the horrific visions, the legendary cloak, as much as humanly possible. We're going to be cutting between sort of like live gameplay commentary, I'm in game right now, and stuff I filmed all over the day because there's massive lengthy parts of this, so we'll be moving between them both. Some of this is positive, some of this is really negative, which is the way it is. I'm just pre-warning you now because I know some people really dislike hearing anything negative, but it's just my opinion on this stuff. But there are some positives to break away from here. So I'm going to show this live because you kind of need to get an idea of how all this works. Obviously the chamber looks a little different now. We've got an extra terminal here. We've got 2 gateways that we can enter, all this kind of stuff. So first of all, let's look at the horrific assaults. These are the new things that are going to be introduced into the game. And as you can see, they're denoted by these little eyes, these little Cthulhu eyes that you can see on the map here. You see we've got an assault on Amethet. We've got an assault by N'Zoth in Pandaria. As you can see in the Vale of Eternal Blossoms there. And as you zoom down, you get this purple area. This is the area that's being assaulted. Now, these are different assaults than what I've already done. They've changed them. They're mixing them up. They are in the same-ish place. The last one was over here. Now it's over here. So they've definitely targeted specific zones for this, which they previewed in their video. And when you go down there, you're going to have kind of 2 different types of assaults. There's an assault that you can do, which is, I'll show you now, was the Mogu assault I did earlier, which is kind of like a mini assault. And unfortunately, these are island expeditions without going to an island. That's all they are. The creativity here is a little lacking so far. But I would reiterate here, this is the first day of the PTR. And Blizzard has this horrendous repeating fallacy and fault of releasing content for us to test way before they've got most of the stuff in place. So, for example, some of these, you can't even finish some of these invasions, these assaults, whatever you want to call them, because they're bugged in a lot of cases and they can't finish them. They're just not ready. So, and there's a lot of currencies in this expansion, or this patch, which you're going to have to get used to. So I'm going to be showing you those right now. So in this Mogu one, for example, you're just going to fill the bar, and that's about it. That's all you're going to get out of it, is filling the bar, collecting some loot. There's a couple of mini puzzles and things like that, and some rares, and that's going to be it. Once you go over to the assault that's actually like the N'Zoth assault, once you go there, things are going to look a little different. This is where you're going to see like the big changing landscape. This is where you're going to see these void artistic areas that we saw in the preview video. This is going to be much more involved and also reward you with a chest at the end of it, which is going to give you one of the new resources, primarily called Coalescing Visions, this blue one. And this is going to once again involve just filling the bar. That's about as far creatively as the guys have got with this, is just fill the bar. Once you fill the bar, you'll have to kill the commander of the area. But what you will find is an extra icon on your map, which is the mini visions. Okay, so these are mini visions. So the main visions are what take place in the Chamber of the Hearts, but you do have these mini visions that you can go into as well. And these mini visions are just small, basically Mists of Pandaria style scenarios. In fact, most of what you're going to find here are Mists of Pandaria style scenarios. They're very set in stone. There's not any variation to them whatsoever. Some people are comparing it to the Crommy events. I would actually disagree with that. There was some variation and some RNG involved with the Crommy event, which made it a little bit more interesting for me. I personally think these are much worse than the Crommy scenario, although it does play out similarly mechanically, to put it that way. So into these mini visions you'll go to collect a little bit of extra resources, and of course the other new currency that comes with this, which is corrupted mementos. So you're going to pick up these corrupted mementos. That's 2 resources you have so far that you're going to be collecting throughout this patch. Then once you've done your assaults and you've collected some corrupted mementos, you're going to come way back here to the Chamber of the Heart, where you can actually start doing some stuff. Okay, so there are no quests in the game just yet to get you started. Usually when you log in and there's been a new patch, a quest bubble will appear, and someone will say, hey, you should really go down to the boat in Zuldazar, or you should really go and talk to Magni, something like that. That will be coming later, I'm sure. And the first thing you're going to want to do is pick up your Legendary Cloak. Now, right now, this is on Hearts of Tauren, is we just purchase it. It's here, the Experimental Black Talon Shroud. Again, this item is currently bugged. My first opinion to this is tragically underwhelming, like unbelievably underwhelming, and is a disgrace to the orange title, even worse than the other items we've seen. I particularly hope that this is a filler and it will do something else other than be flat stats and help you in the visions, which is what this thing does. So what you can see here is the first one, the rank 1 you'll purchase, gives you an item level of 430, but upgrading it, which is what you're going to be doing, you're going to be getting yet another currency to upgrade it. It's actually these purple things here, horrific cores, empower your shroud. So these just level your legendary cloak up, and each level, you can see at the moment, the affix that comes with this is reduce your sanity loss from all sources by 75%. The rank 1 version of that is actually very, very low, and it increases every time you upgrade it to reduce the amount of sanity you lose up to 75%. So you are seeing the affix there based on the capped version, which is what I have here currently equipped, which is the capped version, because they do sell these horrific cores here, so you can do this. Now, the legendary is tragic, it's terrible, but it is also extraordinarily powerful in terms of the main visions. This is the main thing that you're going to be doing. I will say, from everything I could tell right now, this is required content once again. Similar to Islands and similar to a lot of the other features in BFA, they have made this mandatory content. Of course, you're going to want to have a max level legendary cloak. The only way you're probably going to be able to do that is through visions, which means going to be running them a lot going forward. And they have, once again, somewhat time gated it, I'm sorry to say. In order to enter horrific vision, you need a vial. You need a vial. So in order to get a vial, you need to combine coalesced essences. So I'm just going to buy some here. They just made them available. Now, as you can see here, when I mouse over it, it says combine 800 coalescing visions in order to create a vessel of horrific visions. The vessel is what I need in order to enter the visions. So when I click this, you can see it makes one of these. Now, when I mouse over this, you can see it says combine 1600 coalescing visions to create a vessel of horrific visions. So what they've done is actually made, I believe, and presumably, again, I'm presuming this is going to be a weekly reset on how many coalescing visions you need to go into horrific vision, so that you can't just endlessly spam them. They do not want you running this over and over again, because of course that would allow you to finish. Ultimately, that is the answer. It would allow you to finish their content quicker than they would like. So the first one, I think, is about 20, and then it goes to like 100, then 200, then 400. So you get like 5 goes reasonably a week. And if you do want to intently farm assaults, it's hard to say exactly how many coalescing visions you will get now. The chest that we got gave us like 20, and it's already up to 1600. So my presumption with this system is that it scales up in how many goes you get, and then it hits a point which is 1600. I do not believe it goes further than 1600. I tried this earlier and it didn't, so I'll just buy a whole bunch of these things. And it should stay at 1600 once I make that. Yeah, it's 1600. So it stays at 1600, which is kind of going to be your weekly cap for doing this. And then presumably once your server resets, it will go back down to the lowest amount, so you get a few more tries at it. Okay, so now we have our new currency, which is the Vessel of Horrific Visions, which is going to allow us to enter the main vision. But we also have this other currency, which is the Corrupted Mementos, which we're going to use here. So there's two things combining to allow you to stay longer in the Horrific Visions. They are time-based. Basically, they have a sanity bar, which drains, and once your sanity bar expires, you are kicked out, and you can't do it. Similar to the Mr. Pandaria scenario we had on the Sunreaver Isle, or Thunder Isle, or whatever you want to call it, which did the same sort of thing. If we click on this thing here, we get the talent tree. Now, as you can see, I have all talents. I have tested this. I want to be absolutely clear based on my commentary. I have tested this with nothing to something to having everything all the way. And we've also tested it with solo versus multiplayer. So we did it with a 4-man group to compare. As you can expect, similar to the Crummy scenario, these are things that just allow you essentially to stay in the instance longer. So we have Orb Operation Manual, so you can actually spawn restoration orbs in the dungeon, which will allow you to restore your sanity. The sanity bar is draining away. Things that give you maximum amounts of sanity. So obviously, the more sanity you have, the longer you get to stay in there. You get the idea with this. Ultimately, this will allow you, because you're going to be building these things side by side. Your legendary cloak is going to be rising as you unlock more talents here. Obviously, I have all the talents because it's test realm, so they allow you to test everything in between. But as these are rising in conjunction with each other, it goes from you could barely make it to the first boss and kill him on your first go. I mean, you're literally going to be in there for about a minute or something, a minute to 2 minutes, something like that, before your sanity disappears, all the way to you can just run around in there, whatever. So if you're a player who is either terrible at the game or you're committed to doing all content as, say, I don't know, like a Resto Shaman or something like that, and you're determined, despite how inefficient that is, to do it that way, then you're going to be fine. By the time you upgrade this thing and your Legendary Cloak by just repeatedly doing the content, you will ultimately be able to just stay in there forever and ever and ever. Okay, so what are we going to get out of there before I show you and talk about these horrific visions? Well, more currencies. As you can see, I have some orbs here. I have the Orb of Darkest Visions. I have Orbs of Visions. These are all things that you'll get from assaults. I've only gotten Orb of Darkest Visions from inside the vision itself, which we're going to be looking at shortly. And there's a Quartermaster here who is selling some gear. Now, you'll notice another currency available here. One is Echoes of Oblivion, and the other one is the Orbs of Madness. Now, the Orbs of Madness, and this buys 455 loot, as you can see here. I think this is going to be expanded upon. And I will also point out that our friend here, Hertzatoran, actually has some more of this Kiss Curse loot that Blizzard is playing around with. We saw a lot of this in Restless Cabal, the Crucible of Storms raid instance, where they have these items. You see the 430, but they come with a bonus and they come with something detrimental. So, for example, if we look at this Corrupted Ring, Mesmerizing, your damage and healing are increased by 2%, which is an enormous buff, similar to the Aberrations belt that you'll see from Benthic armor. But the your damaging spells and abilities against a repeated target reduce your movement speed by 5% for 6 seconds, stacking up to 10 times. So 50% movement speed reduction should you take that ring and you're tunneling a boss or something like that. They have actually put... What's interesting to me here is the amount of creativity that Blizzard has with discovering and creating ways of annoying the player. They're far more creative when it comes to things that will upset the player rather than things that will inspire and make fun with the player. So you can see, again, damage and healing. These are all rings that you can equip, but they have different ones. Your killing blows cause you to revel in violence, rooting you for 6 seconds. When you receive overhealing, you'll refuse healing for 10 seconds. You fall below 25% health. You taunt all nearby enemies for 5 seconds. Like, motherfucker, that sounds so dangerous. An Eldritch Scroll. I mean, look at the difference in the tooltips, for example. An Eldritch Scroll spawns near you that you and others with this corruption can see. Each second you don't face it and it deals damage to you. If it deals damage to you 5 times, you are feared for 6 seconds. And it goes on and on and on with these kind of things. So very creative on ways of annoying the player, but ultimately the benefit is 2% damage, which is rather dull in and of itself, but I'm sure a lot of people are more than happy to have their name higher on the damage meter. So how you get those items, not particularly sure. Could be raid items, something like that. I will point out here, we don't know how you get horrific cores yet. The system is not in place yet for how you get these horrific cores. Going back over here to the Quartermaster, though, before we head into the Vision, you'll notice this affix which comes with the purple ones if you want these 455 items. These Faceless Masks, found in horrific visions when you're completing objectives under the effects of Faceless Masks. So if any of you have ever played Halo or things like that, you have a choice of debuffs. Now, I haven't been able to find any of these things, so I would like to say they're not in game yet, but that might not be true. So ultimately, once we have our vial, we've done our assaults, we've collected various currency, we've invested our corrupted mementos into talents, we've got our legendary cloak as strong as it can be, we're now ready to go into horrific vision. So you'll come and click these. You see there's one for Stormwind and one for Orgrimmar. If we head inside, a little loading screen, we're going to enter a little chamber with Wrathion. And it's going to show us the basic things here. Now, you can see these pillars that are located around. So in order to start the vision, we speak to Wrathion and we say, I'm going, I've got my vessel, we're good to go. If you're doing this in a group, the way this works is the party leader will initiate in the Chamber of Hearts just as I did, but everybody in the party must have a horrific vial or it won't let you in. And also, the party leader will start the encounter with Wrathion. Now, as you'll notice around here, these are the Faceless Skulls that it talks about. But it does tell you where they are. The Faceless Mask of the Pain belongs here. Where do I find the Faceless Mask? It says the mask is hidden in the shadows. So it's telling you which sections of Orgrimmar these things are located in. I just haven't been able to find them. I've checked every nook and cranny I can think of. As I said, with this full buff, I have a sanity meter of 1200 right now. And I have all the talents and legendary cloaks, so it barely drains. So I'm able to just run around in there. I haven't been able to find them. So if they are there, let me know. But right now, I don't think they're there. So what you could do is activate these, presumably similar to Halo, and give yourself various affixes and debuffs to make it more difficult inside there, and that will reward you with those purple orbs in order to get some better loot. So you can make it more difficult on yourself. So I'm going to head inside now, and we're going to cut some footage in there while I describe them to you. So with the horrific visions, what's the purpose here? Well, similar to the Crummy scenario, there are objectives to complete. They're always the same. The only thing that moves around a little bit are the purple chests, and the loot essentially is just corrupted mementos, which goes towards the talent system. So that's what you're going to find there. Now, there are 5 bosses in the scenario itself. You're not going to be able to do much. I will warn you now, on your very first run, if you have a level 1 legendary cape and no talents or anything like that, you're barely going to make it to that. If you defeat the final boss, whenever you decide to do that, you can do it at any point. Like for the Horde example, the Orgrimmar example, Thrall is the final boss. He's right in the first room. So as soon as you defeat Thrall, the scenario ends. Regardless of anything else, it ends and you get a reward chest, okay, for doing that. Similar to the Mr. Pandario time scenario. So you get a reward chest for doing that. However, there are 4 other bosses in there. There's a mini scenario with Garona. Rexar's in there, things like that. Every extra mini-boss or encounter that you defeat, as Orgrimmar, is sectioned off into smaller encounter areas. So if you go into, like, the Cleft, you will get an extra scenario. If you go to the Valley of Wisdom, you get a scenario to do in that section. Completing that section will reward you with an extra reward chest at the end of the scenario, up to a maximum of 5. So you get 1 for defeating Thrall, and then you get an extra 1 for each of the other sections of the city you manage to complete and get done. So you're going to be moving around here, dealing with these little scenarios, and it's basically just a rinse and repeat progress as to how far you can get with this. How good your class is going to be a factor in this, of course, with how quickly you get this thing done. And ultimately, your purpose is to try and do the entire thing. Now, a couple of notes here. One, this is obviously way better in a group. The scaling of the dungeon is actually fine. The scaling in terms of damage, if you go in with a group or whatever, is completely fine. It felt the same as doing it solo. In terms of how much damage I was having to do, how long it took mobs to die, etc., etc. All that feeling felt exactly the same whether I was doing it solo or whether I was in a group. But the fact of the matter is, once you're in a group, you just deal with the place a lot quicker and more efficiently because you're able to pull more, people are able to use a multitude of class skills, you can have things like a healer in there, you can do all kinds of things that just make it generally more efficient. Overall, it feels very simple. Like, the mechanics are varied for sure. So if you're a reasonably aware player, you're going to be fine here. What I would say is that the biggest nightmare you can have here, and will actually lead to probably a lot of frustration, is the mobs, the one-off mobs that just do either an obscene amount of damage. So the shamans in the first room do crazy damage. Everything else, you can pull that whole room and just AoE. But the 2 shamans that are in that room will kill you. Just those 2 guys. They don't have significantly more health than any other trash, but they will destroy you. Similarly, when you're moving through Orgrimmar, there are mobs that just channel a stun on you. And you can go from, even only fighting a couple of mobs, you can go from 100% to 0 while being in that stun. Now, that just means that, obviously, you're going to have to focus those enemies down, but it's certainly frustrating, as occasionally, while I was learning the route, which is all part of it, I understand that, is that I got stunned and just, that was the end of my run, and it would then cost me significantly more of the coalesced essence in order to try again. So it felt like I'd only got to the second room sometimes. It was like, oh, I just got stunned and now I'm dead, despite the fact I was completely fine a few seconds ago. So that can happen, and be aware of it, because it's very frustrating when that happens. Now, they do intend you to basically be, if you're going to complete this dungeon, they intend you to have most of the things unlocked. And the good signifiers of that is that Orgrimmar in particular is split into 2 distinct areas that don't join to the other 2. So once you complete, say, the right-hand side of Orgrimmar, which would be Rexar and Garona, in order to get to the other side, you're going to have to run back through the center of Orgrimmar and then back around to the other area, which is a significant amount of downtime where you're not doing anything other than draining your sanity. Which is a big pain. Now, with some talents, killing mini-bosses will give you some sanity back. You can, of course, use the orbs to get your sanity back. I will say there is good opportunity here, given the way this works now, to carry people through this on alts. And I say that because one of our players here didn't know he could get the talents, so he didn't have the talents to do things, and his sanity was draining much quicker. When his sanity did run out while we were in the group, you could just resurrect him, and we did it twice, and he came back with just full sanity and was able to continue and got a significant amount of corrupted memories, allowing him to speed through gaining the talents after the event had finished. So there is definitely some opportunity to carry friends through here or to tag along. I would definitely recommend trying to do this in a group. I know most people want to play solo, but if you can do this in a group, it's just overall better. You can help each other. You can do significantly more things. It's just generally a better idea. It's relatively interesting, although it's so blatant. My issue with it is, as we come back here, kind of show you the scenario. My issue with the horrific visions is, one, they're mandatory. I have no doubt that the Legendary Cloak is completely tied to this. If you're interested in your character's progression, I know there are people out there who say, well, you don't need it. Well, I mean, I don't know why you're playing an RPG if you just want a shit character. If you want your character to be as good as you can be, you're obviously going to want to have the Legendary Cloak upgraded, in which case you have to do these. Like them or not, they're just more mandatory content. You guys know how I feel about Blizzard implementing mandatory content as each and every patch is like, well, here's new content, and you have to do it, by the way. There's nothing you can do, like Nazjatar, Mechagon, Islands, Warfronts, you name it, it's been mandatory content on top of mandatory content rather than here's something fun for you to do. They can mention they compare this to the Mage Tower. This is nothing like the Mage Tower. It's not as involved or immersive as the Cromie scenario because there's no definitive finish. One thing I loved about that scenario and why I pushed so hard for it, I did it all in one evening and was completely satisfied with that content. It was because it had a very definitive endpoint where I was done with it. And reaching that was a very satisfying experience. I worked through it. I figured it out. I kept being able to try it as much as I liked. And I had fun doing that. And when it was done, I felt really good about the whole thing. Not the case this time. Not the case this time. This is a case of mandatory, repeatable content over and over again that lacks a little creativity. As I said, the Cromie scenario is better. The Mr. Pandaria scenario is better. They're more involved because they're more specific. This is a generic thing to apply to everybody. I will say my caveat to that is I have not been able to play with the faceless masks yet. That might make things more interesting, but from what I can see, it probably debuffs you in order to get extra items when you come out of here. That's all it seems to do, is reward you with another currency in order to get extra items at the end of it. So that'll be down to whether you use this as a sort of gearing process yourself in order to get things done. That'll be up to you. So that's my feelings on it right now. Am I impressed? No, not really. And I think a big thing that's hanging on my head here is this is, again, it's mandatory content. It doesn't matter whether I like it or not. You're going to have to do it. And you're going to have to do it weekly. You're going to have to do it a lot of times because it's likely to be a rather slow grind to get this thing unlocked and get it done, which is a little sad in my eyes because it's just not that good to warrant that. Filling the bar for the assault quests is not interesting. It's not fun. The aesthetic is nice. The art team, once again, has just outdone themselves, and it can't ever be understated is how good the art team are. They've had a lot of fun with it. They've really created some wonderful environments, but the gameplay aspect, once again, is where I'm let down because we're basically just AoEing in the outdoors. Then we're AoEing indoors. And that's it. But we're time blocked until we go through a required amount, which they intentionally prevent you from doing. At least so far, this is, again, PTR, subject to change. And there are some items in the game that don't do anything yet, like this here. You can see this treasure reward. It's some stuff. They haven't implemented a lot yet. So I'll keep following it over the weeks and months. As a defining feature of the game, no. I think some people will resent them. And that's the problem with it, because it could be fun. If I had a choice to do this and a definitive endpoint, I think I could have a lot of fun with this, similar to what I did with Cromie. However, it's not a case. I already know this is just another grind. That's all I see, and it's clouded by that. It's made murky by that. It's made muddy by the fact that this is just a grind. That's all it is. There's nothing else to it. So that's how it looks right now. If it does change in any major way, I'll bring you back to it. The next thing I'm going to be looking at is the new essences. Seems some interesting results. Been playing around with my friends with the new essences. We have some of them here, like this one, the Breath of the Dying. We've been messing around with that one, and the other one was the Spark of Imagination, which buffs your essence damage on a 1-minute cooldown and is actually giving some people some crazy DPS gains. Also nullifies certain, you might have noticed some essences have been buffed, like Visions has been buffed because it doesn't seem to be benefiting from things like Spark of Inspiration, which does affect the other essences. So it might be the fact that that becomes weaker because of this one. So we need to make that one stronger so that people don't feel forced to take, say, Condensed Life Force or whatever. So that's something we'll look at in a little bit more detail once we have more data. That needs a little bit more time than anything else. But there's the horrific Visions. There's the horrific assaults, guys. I wish it was better. I come away feeling very unimpressed. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.